Hi, this is Faxi Nadu. Welcome to another part of the modular crash course. In this part, we will be cloning the Nord lead just for our practice and example. And by doing that, we're going to do something we haven't done before, and is kind of learning a way to do FM in modular. And we'll show you exactly how to do everything. But first, let's have a look at the Nord lead and see what it actually does, and let's talk about it for a minute. So this is a hardware synth from Clavia, and we're just taking a look at a picture of the Nordrack 2X, which is one of the versions of the Nord lead. And the thing about this synth is not so much the design itself. The design, as you will see, is very simple. This simplicity actually allows for is for great functionality, because it's so simple and so hands-on. You can quickly program it and quickly design sounds with it. And it also, like, there's 99% of the people really love the sound of the Nord lead, because it's like really mix cutting and really strong, and kind of sounds coming out of the synth like it's like already compressed or something. Myself, I don't like it so much, I must confess. I don't know why. It's just a little harsh to me, and it's I like synths that are more tameable and kind of more lush. But I do see the appeal. Like, I understand why people like the synth, but personally prefer some other stuff. But let's get down to actually looking at what it has. Like we said, it's a simple design. There are two oscillators on this synth. Oops, why is it not letting me zoom into areas? So there are two oscillators on this synth, and they have kind of an interaction between them that we will check. Oh, there they are. That we will check out. These are the LFOs. There's two LFOs. One of them is serving as either an LFO or an arpeggiator. There's just one volume amplifier, one filter section, and that's pretty much it. It has MIDI controls. It can be monophonic, polyphonic. It has unison, portamento, and all that. So compared to some of the other stuff we've made, it's not really complicated to do, but it does have FM in sync between the oscillators, and I will show you how to set that up. So let's get down to it. The first thing we obviously need is the MIDI brain, and I've already taken that out prior, and it's connected to the MIDI incoming to our patch. And the thing here, just by taking out that MIDI brain, we've already cloned the unison and the portamento and all this section. Because if you look at our MIDI brain right here, then you will see that we have portamento and the unison. Everything is already within the MIDI brain. So we've got that covered. Let's take a look before. Okay. Yeah, let's start with the oscillators. I was going to say maybe the filter, but let's start with the oscillators. So if we kind of zoom in, and this is not such a high quality picture, I'm sorry, but it's good enough for us. We just want to see what it has. So there's two oscillators with basic subtractive synth waveforms, and we see there's also the ability to get a noise oscillator in there. So let's take out two oscillators. And we're going to use the deflector oscillators for this. And we're going to take our basic oscillator that we're going to start with is going to be, let's take one ELIASA gate. This will be our OSC1. And then let's take for our second oscillator, let's take this one, the sync one. And I'll show you why in a minute. Now I want to show you one other thing. It's available in other modulars and other forms, a way to label what you're doing. So let's take out two text bars and kind of label what we're doing. So this will be OSC1, and this will be OSC2. And let's take out, we're going to, like I said, clone the Nord lead, but of course we're doing it in modular. Some things we can clone exactly. Some things we can get similar, and some things we can just change because we want to. Let's take out a noise oscillator. and separate it from our other oscs because this is just the way it works here. The noise generator, the other oscillators don't have noise on it. So we're just going to have a separate noise generator for ours, and it's going to be up here. So we've taken out the oscillators. Let's see what else we've got. Let's take out the models we're going to need first, mostly at least, before making the connection. So amplifier is simple enough. All it has basically is an ADSR envelope with gain, overall gain on it. So we're going to need a VCA to serve as our amplifier. Let's take one out. And then let's take out a regular ADSR envelope, just like they have. So, and the envelope needs gate. And there we go, connected the gate, and we're connecting. This is just a simple enough connection, so I'm just doing it right now because it's an obvious connection. There is nothing to choose here. It's obviously going to go like this. So, and the ADSR is controlling the VCA, our amplifier. So we've already covered this section pretty much completely. So, and then we have a filter section, and the filter, we can see that it has an ADSR on it. There are different filter types, different choices for filters. And of course, cutoff, resonance knob, and envelope amount with keyboard tracking. And we can see also it can respond to velocity. And there is a distortion circuit in the filter. So let's take out let's see the shapes that they are offering. They're offering HP 24 dB, low pass 24 dB, 12 dB, band pass, and notch plus LP together. Let's take out, I was thinking we have two options here. We have either this poly filter or this one. So the differences between them, oh, I'm sorry, that's not the right one, or this one. So the differences are as follows. This one is from Sonic Core, first of all, and it has many types inside, including some special types like combs, phasers, stuff like that. And this one is from Adern, and it has less types in it, but still it has a lot of types, but just not as much. It sounds differently, and it has something cool inside, which is like a second resonance circuit that gets you like a really narrow resonance. If we click on the A here, this filter is capable of self-oscillation and has an extra resonance knob for extra steep filtering, ultra thin resonance. Now you might say, okay, awesome, let's totally use this one. But there's one drawback to this one is that if you click here again, the max polyphony for this module is 3. So whatever we do, and no matter how many voices we set here, if we use this filter, we're going to have a max polyphony of 3. Now, you know what? We can live with that for this example. We've used the poly one in many other videos and patches that we made. So let's just show this one. Now, obviously, if you want to, you can just delete this one in your patch and use the poly one. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I've just cloned also the text bar, and we'll call it surprisingly, our filter. Yay! And like we've seen, there is an ADSR envelope on the filter here as well. So let's just use the same type of ADSR. I'm copy pasting, and we have another envelope. And there we go. And we know that it has keyboard tracking, so keyboard tracking for us is simple enough. And it's the key follow right here, and all we have to do is this, and we've already done the key tracking. And that's an obvious connection, so yeah, let's just keep it that way. Now we said there's distortion inside. Now we can listen to it and try to find kind of distortions that sound similar. But let's in this case, in the case of the distortion, like we did with the filter, let's like add our own. Let's change the sound a bit to give it a unique sound for this patch, even though it's cloning the functionality of the Nord. So let's take out let's just have fun. You know, there's so many in here. You can change them around and choose whatever you want. I'm going to choose the guitar drive, just because. So we have a guitar drive, and we have the filter section. I'm thinking if we want to have it pre or post this filter. I think I've shown in some videos that I'm not sure actually how it is on Nord. I'm guessing I don't know. Let's have it pre post filter. Distortion. Okay. So we've taken out the distortion. And then let's see what else we have to do. There are two LFOs, and we can see that as far as wave shapes, there are regular subtractive wave shapes as well as like a sample and hold options. And it also shows the various destinations that are available. So let's first take out these LFOs. And these are pretty much simple LFOs. So let's take out the LFO B that you're familiar with. And these are just the most basic simple ones. Let's give ourselves some more room to work with as well. So there we go. Let's put the LFOs down here. Let's take out two more text bars. And this will be LFO1. And this will be LFO2. Now on the Nord, you can sync the LFOs. And even if you couldn't, I would want to sync the LFOs. So let's sync the LFOs. And you already know this. We need a MIDI clock. Put it over here. And you need a frequency divider. Oops, I want the B. Frequency divider B. There we go. And let's send sync, not sync, but yeah, the sync signal, the signal to sync to the LFOs. Let's have the option to gate our LFOs. So we're adding something of our own touch in here. And there we go. Now we have two LFOs. And I want to also have the option to control smooth them. So it's going to be like here. You see that you have like a more stepped one and like a more rounded one. So we're going to take out two control smoothers. And these work the same I've shown before. Kind of similar functionality to the low pass that kind of smooths out the peaks so you don't get clicks out of your LFOs. And there we go. So we have two LFOs at the ready. We cloned the LFOs themselves. And we see there's an additional envelope on the Nord lead, which is called a modulation envelope. And it can be routed. You can see that it can be routed to various things. But it's an attack decay envelope. It does not have sustain or release on it. So we can just do the same for our mod envelope. And let's take out a AD envelope just like they have over there. So it's just attack and decay. And obviously we need to give it gate. And we can name it. Oops, I'm sorry. We can name it. And there we go, mod envelope. So that's our mod envelope. Now before we make like the actual connections, let's go back here and look at the oscillators. So the oscillators will allow for FM between them using the mod envelope, and there's a knob that lets you decide how much FM over here, and then you can envelope it, like make it so the FM is not constant, but actually following the amount of FM is following an envelope slope. Also pulse width, I see, and a pulse width modulation ability. And there's a sync going on between the oscillators. So I have a little bit more kind of a routing than they do. First of all, for the oscillators, we're going to need pitch modifiers, right? We want to be able to send the LFO and maybe the mod envelope to modify the pitch of the oscillator. So each one is, let's do this. Let's give ourselves room to work with for the oscillators. let's move all this aside for a minute. And then we have, okay, let's go. So this OSC has, this is the mod, sorry, the pitch modifier for the first oscillator. And the frequency is going to go from the MIDI brain into the pitch modifier into the frequency input of the oscillator. And the exact same thing for the second oscillator. Well, you know what? This is not good, is it? Why is it not good enough? It has two modulation inputs, doesn't it? And I'm thinking now that here on the Nord, you can decide that you have both LFOs going to the oscillators. And you can also send at the same time the mod envelope to the oscillators. So we actually need 3 inputs, don't we? So this one's not good enough for us. We're going to get one more. And we're going to use, there's no module with just 3, so we're going to just use 4, and that's fine for us. So this is more in keeping with like cloning the functionality. And here we go. Now on the Nord, you choose, right? You have a choice. You can send the LFO either to the OSC, either to the filter. You choose, each LFO can go to either thing, and the mod envelope as well. So we don't have to make that choice because we used it's like a modulation mixer. We could have used a switch, but this is giving us the option to not sacrifice the LFO. Like, for example, on the Nord, if you want this LFO to be on the filter, then that's it, right? It's sacrificed, and you can't use it for anything else because it's set to one thing. So our LFOs are going to be able to, you're going to be able, for example, to send this is LFO number 1. LFO number 1. So you're going to be able to modulate 2 or 3 or whatever things at the same time. And there we go. So this one is connected, LFO2 as well. There we go. And our mod envelope as well. So let's go to the mod envelope all the way over here. So now we've connected the whole functionality of modulating the oscillators with our modulators. All we have to do is pull it up, and we can use all of them at the same time on the 2 oscillators. So we have the pitch modifying from the LFOs going into the oscillators, so that is settled. But one thing we don't have right now is if you look at our oscillators, all we have is a saw wave shape. This is just a saw oscillator. And we could have used a multi-osc. Let me show you the difference. If we go here to the Sonic Core multi-oscillator, then you notice it has all the subtractive shapes on it, but there's no FM input into it. So it doesn't respond to FM. You can send screwed up frequency inside and it will respond, but it won't be as clean and as neat as using the FM input on these flexor oscillators. So we're going to use this, but then we have just a saw. So what we need to do is we need to have the option to shape this saw into other waveforms, and it will give us, in the end, all the wave shapes that we need. So we have saw covered, but we're missing sine and triangle and a pulse width. So we're going to go to OSC Shapers. We're going to take out a saw to tri-syn. Then we're going to take out a saw to PWM. Clone it for our second oscillator as well. So copy paste. And what these modules do is they take out a saw oscillator, the original saw oscillator, and they are able to turn them into the other shapes. This is how it works. So so what we're doing is we have this output will be our saw. This output will be an option of either triangle all the way to the left or a sine all the way to the right, or a mix between them, which is kind of cool as well. So we have another something that is not available here, is to kind of have a sort of mixed signal between a sine and a triangle. And we have a pulse width modulation. So it's basically like a pulse, and here you have the pulse width knob and the pulse width input. And then we're going to need to actually choose, right? We need to be able to decide which we're using, which shape we're using. So let's take out a switch. And again, let's make more room because we're going to need some more. Copy paste for the second oscillator. And then just connect the outputs of each shape. So there we go. And there we go. So now the first position would be the saw, the second position would be try or sine, and then the third position would be the pulse wave. So we've covered actually all the waves. And we need to make, obviously, the sync. Let's bring back all the cables. And we need to make all the same connection here. So that's it. Just doing exactly what we did before. And to the output. There we go. So we have our waveforms themselves set up. Now let's see, what else do we have here? We have ring modulation option, and we have a sync option before we get to the FM. So let's do the ring modulation, which is easy enough. Take out a ring modulation module, and it's in effects. There it is. Ring modulator. Now, do we want, it's a division, so I'm thinking, do we want to divide OSC1 by 2 or 2 by 1? Let's have OSC1 be the first input and OSC2 be the second input. And the cool thing with modular that you can at any time interchange what they do, so you can decide you want it differently if you want. But let's just keep it that way. So we have the ring modulation set up. And as far as, before we set up the sync in FM, as far as what is coming out overall, so we have OSC1 that needs to be mixed inside the signal, OSC2 that needs to be mixed inside the signal. And here it would be just that. It would be OSC1 and 2 with the ring mod on or off. And if you want noise, it would be set, the second oscillator would be set to noise. Let's do it a little bit differently. Let's give ourselves the option, because we don't need to have this to have it set up this way. We're going to give ourselves the option to mix between them. So instead of choosing if you want the ring mod in or not, you just mix it in or not. And the same with the noise. So let's bring out a mix 4. And let's mix all our 4 signals. So OSC1 would be the first input. We're going to just do it like logically. OSC2 would be the second input. Ring modulation would be, I don't know, let's do it. I think noise should be the third. It doesn't matter. And then ring modulation, let's make it the 4th. So we can mix all of these together. And we have just like given ourselves just a little bit more options. And let's bring out a meter. If you're going to mix and gain, meter, peak meter. Just so when we can get it not to clip if we're outputting all this stuff inside. See, right now it is, let's put these on halfway just for the example at the moment. And keep our meter down here. So we have like the whole routing of the output of the oscillators already done. And we can continue with the audio routing from this point. Let's just do this real quickly. So it's going to go to the, bring the filter down here. Let's finish building it and then decide if we want to organize it differently or keep this organization. So let's get the filter here for a minute. going to go out from the mix. And where was the distortion? Let's filter it. And let's send it to the distortion. And let's have it go out from the distortion into the VCA. From the VCA to the poly out, which will sum up all our voices. And over to the outside. Now, one thing we didn't do, I've taught this before. You have to connect the eSync connection, or the synth won't make a sound. So, and this has to do with managing polyphony with envelopes. So let's look at how many envelopes we have that actually need this. Well, this envelope belongs to the filter. Let's take it down here. So we have 3 envelopes like this, right? We have the filter envelope that needs, the filter envelopes that needs eSync, the amp envelope that needs it, and the mod envelope. So we need 3 eSync inputs. So let's take out eSync, add 4. Oops. There's 2 and there's 4. So let's just take out the 4. And you just need to make this connection. It's a totally technical thing within the voice structuring in Modular. So there's no artistic choice right here. You just need to make it. So we're making it, connecting it, and yeah, now I'm hitting notes. So we did make the right connections. It's outputting sound, which is cool. And so we know that our audio chain is already connected and working. And let's at this point, normally, I just tend to save just to have it already kind of in the system. So let's take back a look again at the FM. So what the node can do is it can have one of the oscillators FMing the other oscillator, but it's a fixed architecture. You can't choose which one will FM which one. And the same with the sync mechanism. Let's change it up a bit so we can have FM on either or even both, like even cross FM modulation between the oscillators. And let's have OSC1, and for sync, OSC1 will be the master, and OSC2 will be the slave. So let's do all that. Let's start with the sync because it's much quicker to do. And as you notice, there's a sync input on this oscillator and a gate input, which can also be used. Both of these can kind of be interchangeable, but let's do it like, let's have this be gated by MIDI so you can have a retriggered OSC with OSC1 and a syncable OSC with OSC2. All we need for this, we can make the connection, but I want to take out a switch, a on-off switch, because there's no on or off. If we connect the gate directly here, it'll always be retriggered OSC. And I want to give us the option of choosing, do we want a retriggered OSC or do we not want a retriggered OSC? And we'll do the same with the sync input because the sync input as well doesn't have that. So let's copy paste the on-off switch and put it down here. So we connected the gate to this one. So this one is retriggered by gate. But we want this one to be retriggered by the master OSC. So what we do is we output the master OSC into the switch and into the sync. So now when we turn on this button, OSC2 will be retriggered by OSC1. And if we turn on this button, whoa, too many cables. On this, then OSC1 will be retriggered by gates. So that's cool, and that's set up, and it's really simple to set up, and it's already inside. Now, for the FM, you see that these have FM inputs on them. And if you move this knob, then it would be a positive amount, and this would be a negative amount. So we don't need to clone the, if you look here, the amount can go into positive or negative. The envelope can be inverted, but we don't need to do that. Oh, I'm sorry. We don't need to do that because we have it on the knob itself. So all we need to do is give the oscillators the ability to modulate each other using also the mod envelope as a source for changing the VCA. So let's take out two VCAs. I'm just going to copy paste this one. Let's put them again. We need some room. How shall we do this? So make room. Yeah, let's do it this way. Let's keep the mod envelope up here. Take the LFOs here as well. That should do it. We can put everything that we need over to the left. So LFO 2. LFO 1. And then all our modulators are together all the way to the right. And we'll clean it up in just a minute. So, Okay. So, VCA for the FM of the first oscillator, and VCA for the FM of the second oscillator. So what is going to be modulating this VCA is the mod envelope, right? Or the LFO, actually. As we look here, again, let's look. FM can be modulated by the, or no, not by the LFO. Let's look. Yeah, okay. OSC1 has the ability to modulate the FM, and OSC2, sorry, LFO1 has the ability, and LFO2 does not. I'm thinking, how should we do this? Maybe we should just have both our LFOs be able to do it. Okay, let's start with envelope. So let's connect this our mod envelope. Let's bring back the cables. Our mod envelope's output into the both VCAs. And you can use an exponential VCA over here instead of a linear VCA, and you'll get like a slope for the FM. So let's just use this one, just giving you like an idea that you can change the VCA as well to have a different characteristic. And we're also gonna need to have the ability to bring in the LFOs. And if you look here, you don't have to choose, right? You can have the FM modulated by the LFO and the mod envelope. So it's not a switch that we need, it's a modulation mixer that we need. Let's take out the mix. Yeah, let's take out the, well, I'm thinking instead of using a VCA, let's do something else. Now the reason is this, because we need two inputs, we need the LFO and the envelope, right? So instead of a VCA module, let's use an amplitude modulator module, which just gives us two inputs. Yeah, and it actually gives us, it gives us another thing that we need, and I'll show you in a minute. So the first one is, just 1 minute. Got confused there for a minute, and now we're good. So the mod envelope is going to go to the first input, and if we look at the Nord, their design used LFO1 for the FM, and yeah, we just have, let's get lazy, let's use just LFO1. And there we go. So we have the FM, the ability to modulate the FM, but we haven't connected yet actually the source. What is going to FM? So we want actually cross FM ability, right? We want the ability to have the first oscillator modulate frequency modulate the second one, and vice versa. So the first oscillator's output, and I'm thinking, like you could take the output of the sine, because if you're using FM, you might just normally use sine, but let's give ourselves the option to do funky things with the FM. And the output would be either oscillator shape you choose. So let's have the output of the shape, the output of the second oscillator. And that is actually the signal itself that is going to modulate this input. And the same here, OSC1 is going to modulate the FM input of OSC2. Now we can make the first connection. Let's connect this circuit. So now for the first oscillator, everything is connected. If we turn on the FM, it will frequency modulate the first oscillator based on the settings on the second oscillator, and the amount and volume and time domain of the FM influence is influenced either by the mod envelope or either by the first LFO, and it is this cable. And we also have an offset knob. As you can see, and this is pretty good because I was thinking to do it with a switch, but if you look at the Nord, then you can turn on FM amount right here, right? And this would be kind of like our knob over here. And you can decide that you want it to be modulated by an envelope or by an LFO, or you can have no modulation and just straight up FM, and that would be like constant FM. The second oscillator will be constantly modifying FM in this oscillator with no time domain. And this will be done in part taking the offset all the way up, and just exactly the same thing, right? So it's, instead of being closed, FM, like if it's closed, the signal is coming in and it's going out, then there's nothing coming out. It's like a VCA, the same exact functionality. If it's open, then it's influenced by the VCA, and if it's offset, then this is like a volume knob. So this is an exact same thing. And we need to do the same for oscillator 2. Now, the way digital systems work, right now oscillator 2 is modulating oscillator 1, and we want oscillator 1 to also modulate oscillator 2. And if we connect it directly, it will not allow us to make this connection. Oops, connection, blah, 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 generates recursion without delays. What this cryptic thing basically means that within a digital system, it'll create a feedback that it doesn't know how to use. It's kind of like, think it like on a calculator when it just gives you that that error. It just cannot compute that because it just makes internal feedback. So what you need to do is you need to bring out, there's a solution, and it's this one, converter, XMod feedback converter. On a technical level, what it does is it just nudges the signal one sample, as in a sample of your sample rate. So let's say you're on 44,100. So it would be 1 out of this 44,100. And this makes it so there's no internal feedback, and the system recognizes that now, and it lets you make the connection. So we have cross FM set up between both of our oscillators, and it's influenced by envelope, LFO, exactly like over here. Different wave shapes, different things going on. I think, are we done? No, we have to, we did not connect the modulation inputs of the filter, right? We have 2 modulation inputs. And let's take a look at the filter. The filter has its own dedicated envelope. So we know that one's going in there. And you could send either LFO or both LFOs to the filter down here, filter. So let's do that as well. Let's have that option. Let's go in here. Let's take out, let's connect the mod envelope. Not the mod envelope, I'm sorry, the filter envelope. So the filter envelope is dedicated to the filter. So it goes in, let's have this be mod 1 input. And we do not need this would be our env knob, and this is positive and negative. We have a bipolar signal for our envelope, so it's cool. And we only have one more connection, right? We have CMOD. We used one, and now we need one more. So all we need to do is let's have a mixer module, mix2. And this is going to go into the second modulation input. Let's put this mixer all the way up. So the knob that actually affects the amount is this one. And then this would be the amount of either LFO. So this would be LFO1. And this would be the second LFO. So now if you want to put in modulation on the filter, we have things going as follows. We have the first modulation input. Again, this is our dedicated envelope. The second one is either LFO or both LFOs, and these are your amount knobs for these LFOs. And don't forget that you obviously need as well. So this would be the amount that the LFO is coming into the filter, but you need to decide on the range using this knob, and it's bipolar as well. So that is all connected. And another thing we need to do, almost forgot about it, is there's actually a few more things we need to do. One of the more important things is you have the ability to modulate pulse width with the Nord lead. And again, let's look at what can do this. So it's OSC1 can do it. Filter LFO1 can do it, and mod envelope can do it. LFO2 doesn't have that option for some reason. So pulse width would be on our pulse width kind of shaper, right, on this input. So if you put the oscillator on the pulse width, which would be our third option on the switch, and then modulate this button, it would be the pulse width modulation coming out. So we need to connect this input into the modulators. So we have one connection, as you see right here, but we need two, right? We need the mod envelope, like we said, and LFO1. So let's do the same. We have already mix2 in here. So exactly as we did on the second module, on the LFOs, the second modulation input for the filter, exactly the same. Let's place one for the second OSC, one for the first OSC. Some more room, please. And obviously the output of the mixer is going into the pulse width modulation input. And we said LFO1. So let's have the LFO be the first connection. And then the mod envelope would be the second connection. And there we go. So we've gotten the pulse width circuits. And that's another thing that we have taken care of. One more thing, I'm looking right now, and it says that LFO2 kind of can serve either as an LFO or an arpeggiator, as well as also modulate the amplitude. So you can get a tremolo effect out of this LFO. So let's do both of these things. Let's expand on the LFO and the arpeggiator thing. Let's do it a little bit differently from the Nord. First of all, the amplitude modulation is easy enough. And let's bring it in. And I'm going to put it up here before the poly out. So let's disconnect it. Let's connect the VCA into the amplitude modulator. And out. And now all we need to do, of course, is connect the amplitude modulator into the LFO's input. Let's have it go to, what was it, LFO2, right? Yeah, LFO2. So LFO2 goes to the amplitude modulator, and let's have it go to the second modulation input, And let's use the first one. Any synth that respects itself basically has the ability to respond to velocity. So when you press different key, you press your keyboard at different strengths, or you send notes at different volumes, it'll respond to that information. So it's as easy as taking velocity and connecting it into this knob. Now what I suggest is, as you see, the offset is turned off. As it is right now, I'm playing notes right now, it's not playing anything. And now it is when I take it up. So what I suggest is, in order to have perfect velocity control, is of course leave this all the way off, take this all the way up. And now I'm pressing in different volumes. And it will respond to velocity, as well as the LFO. So if you do something like this, you need some sorry. Did I make a wrong connection here? There we go. That's what I didn't make I didn't use the right LFO. There we go. So we have tremolo, we have the velocity information, and we have all that. The last thing we noticed, I said before, LFO2 can serve as an arpeggiator. Let's not, like in the Nord, you have to sacrifice the LFO. You have to put it on arpeggiator mode, and then you'll have just one LFO to be able to be used in the patch. Let's have both our LFOs function as LFOs, and just give ourselves the option to also use an arpeggiator. And as you notice, we have a free modulation input on each of the oscillators. So we're going to do, we're going to take out a flexor. Where did it go? Instead of using like, okay, we don't have an actual arpeggiator module. You can do it in scope really simply by sending, there is like an arpeggiator device, and I can just send arpeggiated notes. Like you can send a MIDI into the arpeggiated device and then into your synth. So you basically have an arpeggiator on anything you want at your fingertips. But let's do it in the patch in a little bit of a different way so we can look at the flexor note sequencers. So let's take out let's go to sequencers, and you can see here hyper note sequencer. So this is basically, it's kind of like an arpeggiator, only the difference is you actually draw your notes in. So it's pretty cool step sequencer, and it has patterns inside and everything you need. And the way it works is, obviously it's going to need to have a speed knob inside to tell the sequencer how fast to progress. So in Flexor, you do not use the Creamer MIDI clock. You use the Flexor ramp generator. And it's over here. And we're going to give it gate. Output it into here. And then this is modulating the input of each oscillator's modulation, pitch modulation. So the way it would work, so pretty cool. We have a sort of weird arpeggiator pitch thing going on over here. So we have that set up as well. Oh, I didn't connect. I did a mistake here. I did a totally huge mistake, and that's why it made a cool. This is what's cool. Okay, I'll show you. What I did was I connected the ramp into the frequency inputs, and basically the ramp, what it is outputting is basically just like an LFO signal. It's a ramp is a keen to a perfect kind of saw. So basically every time it hits a peak, it gives out a clock signal. So when it peaks, clock, 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 clock. So you kind of and when you have the speed of that saw, that ramp, on a certain BPM. So that's how it works. So what it's outputting, the ramp is actually outputting a frequency information. And we've outputted, instead of outputting it to the speed of how fast this sequencer works, I outputted it to the frequency. So it actually took the frequency of this ramp, this LFO, and used that to modulate the pitch. So that's why we got like this sort of torn pitch. And you know what? That was pretty cool. So this is again shows how in modular you can make really retarded connections and actually come up with good sound. But the way it is supposed to be is, there we go, and now the ramp is also moving, and the frequency goes here. Let's connect. I'm thinking to do it even in another way, you know? Let's do it another way. This would be more like of a modulation, but we want it to be more like an to act more like an arpeggiator. So instead of sending it to the pitch modifier, let's disconnect this. Let's in a cleaner way, and it'll be more like an arpeggiator. So instead of sending it to the pitch modifiers, let's send the original frequency signal. Let's try it this way. So the original frequency signal is going to go to the arpeggiator module. And let's test it. Let's have this. Yeah, and this will be better. Okay, hold on. And now it's acting like a classic arpeggiator. Okay, so that's so now it's better, I think. Let's do it even cooler. You know what? Let's use our experimentation from before that we found out is not exactly the perfect kind of way to send arpeggiator in here. And let's send it also to the pitch modifier. So it'll be able to modulate it and also to just be the input. But we have to do one more thing. I've just noticed it right now. We have the arpeggiator, and we can't turn it on or off, right? And we don't want that. We want to be able to turn it on or off. So instead of going directly into the frequency input, do it like this. And this switch will basically be ARP on or off switch. So we're going to have the switch itself go into each of the oscillators. There we go. That'll give us really cool flexibility. And then we'll have the original frequency going into the switch to the first input. And then let's have the frequency of the arpeggiator, the sequencer, going into the second input. And now if we choose the first one, let's offset this for a minute so there's no velocity. So this is without the arpeggiator, and then if we take it here, and obviously there's nothing on 3 and 4, so oops. Cool. And we gave ourselves actually another option here. by connecting it to the fourth modulation input, we can have, for example, the whole synth be no stage, one of the oscillators with the sequencer. So now it's just straight up. I don't know, just it was available, and why not use this connection? So it gives something more that this module can do. We're taking more out of it. So I think we're pretty much done. If you look at everything, there could be something I've missed. Don't kill me. Okay, let's see. Let's look at one more thing. I think we missed something here. The envelope amount, it can be influenced by velocity on the Nord lead, the envelope amount on the filter. We can get that in as well. So we have our envelope going in here. Now we can have the strength of the envelope modulated by velocity. So let's have it do that. Let's bring in a amplitude modulator. Bring in the envelope. Is actually in this case, it's the signal to be modulated, right? You're not using it to modulate the amplitude modulator. You want the amplitude modulator to modify the ADSR's signal itself and connect this to velocity. Now all you need to do is, if you want the envelope to not be influenced by velocity, then you just have to keep the offset all the way up. Let's try it. Well, what wave shape are we on? Let's bring in the saw. And let's bring in the filter. Let's take away the routing. Let's put the filter on low pass for a minute. So the filter is influencing right now. I want to get something pronounced in there. There we go. Whack, whack, whack. Let's see that. Let's make sure that our velocity is actually doing what it's supposed to do. I've not often done it this way, so let's check. And so it's this knob. Let's take off the offset. So now it's not working. So this is already a good sign because it's doing what we wanted it to do. Now I'm hitting harder and softer. So this will be soft. Yay, so it works exactly in the manner that we wanted it to do. So now you have that circuit as well. You have the velocity, the ability to velocity track the envelope amount. That should be everything. Let's take a look back. So we've modeled everything that this synth has. And just want to show that if you take a look at, there's a clone for the Nord lead that is called the Discovery DSP. And what they did, they have, everything is like exactly the same as far as functionality. Obviously, it doesn't sound as good as the Nord. Doesn't sound good at all, in my opinion, this plugin, but it's usable for some things. They also added some effects, built-in effects. They have a phaser, a chorus inside, panning, and a delay line. We can add all that, but you can obviously just do all of that by just placing multi-effect. Go effects. So you have modeled that as well easily just by putting the insert effect inside. That's pretty much it, I think. Don't kill me if I've missed anything. Obviously, it is not exactly a one-to-one clone of the Nord lead, but it has a similar functionality. And I think our synth can actually do more because we have more going on with our modulators. Our oscillators can FM each other, while in the Nord only one of them can FM the other. And we have obviously the added bonus that being modular, we can decide that we want to switch things around. We can have the distortion be pre-filter. We can have add a distortion. We can have one that is pre and one that is post. We can change the filter. We can change the oscillators. Or we can do anything we want. And obviously, you know all that already. So what I hope you learned in this one is kind of how to get the sequencer going, and how to do FM in Modular. That also allows you for manipulation by an envelope. So this is if you made the connection straight up, like for a little bit when I first started with this, I would just make this connection and I'd have straight up FM. But then I realized that by connecting amplitude modulator or a VCA, then I can easily implement envelope to FM as implemented on synths such as the Nord did over here. So hope you like this one, and stay tuned for the next video, and I'll see you there. Ciao.